is CoCoTALK, the nation's leading live talk show featuring the Tandy color computer. With your host, Mr. Gameplay Goodness himself, Stevie Stroud. All right, everybody, welcome to CoCoTALK episode 30. I just want to take a quick moment here to do a shameful plug. You're looking at the CoCoTALK royal blue t-shirt that is available in our retro swag shop. So yeah, and it wouldn't be CoCoTALK without wearing your CoCoTALK shirt and drinking from your CoCoTALK mug. So merchandising, it is what it is. So welcome to CoCoTALK episode 30, the nation's leading live talk show. Look at, there's Curtis Boyle. Hold it up again, Curtis. So Curtis Boyle has got his mug that looks gorgeous. And Grant Leedy's got his I'm a Coconut t-shirt on. Look at that. I see Curtis behind Grant on the screen there. It's like, it's Inception. It's a dream within a dream within a dream. Merrily, merrily, merrily. So here we are. We're at CoCoTALK episode 30. It's been an interesting past couple of weeks. So last weekend we were rejoicing on Tandy Assembly, so we got done rejoicing on how great it was to get together and how we all got along, and Tandy Assembly was great, and we were all drinking the Kool-Aid and flying the flag, and it was a great time. Great sense of community and spirit was with us. It was like the Christmas spirit was here, and then we started a new week, and a couple of things happened, and a couple of reactions maybe weren't as desired or preferred, and feathers were ruffled, toes were stepped on, and here we are. So the focus of this week's show is community drama. So there's been a little bit of that going on this week. We're going to talk about it, but we're going to talk about it, as adults here. I'm going to take the high road and try to, shed some light and maybe just come to a happy conclusion or something, if that's even possible. So with me so far, Marentes from Australia. G'day, Nick.
G'day, everyone.
All around good-looking man. Mike Rowan is with us.
Hi.
We have Steve Bjork, legendary software designer, is with us as well. Also, creator of very cool Halloween animatronic stuff now with Halloween Haunts. We have the very pixelated and grayscale David Ladd with us. Actually, it was Sir David Ladd, Lord of the Floppies, King of the Analog Domain. Let us all bow. David Ladd is here.
Hello.
From the Great White North, we have L. Curtis Boyle. A, how's it going?
Hello, everyone.
We also have somewhere from up there in the Great White North, we have Glen Hewlett. Thanks for being here, Glen.
Well, thanks for having me. And
last but certainly not least, also wearing a very dapper royal blue CoCoTALK t-shirt, we have Mark Overholser. So here we are. Richard Lorbieski is in the chat saying, I'm in my car heading home. Eddy Szczerbinski is here saying, I had my need to... Okay, Eddy's calling in. All right. So Eddy's joining us. Now, who's got the hip-hop music playing there?
Sorry, that was me.
All right.
It's my phone ringing.
Good stuff. Good times. All right. So, Eddy. Eddy, I might need to add you as a contact. I'm not sure what's going on. Yeah, I'm trying to hit add to group call. Eddy, I can't add you to the call. So what is most likely happening is you might have an outdated version of Skype. I'm not sure. But I can't quite add you. Okay. And Retro Innovations is here. Boisey Pete says, what's the link? Just call me. Yeah. I can't answer your call, Eddy. But we'll see what we can do. But anyways, so hello, everybody. Another great week is here. And another week has come and gone, and here we are, and it's CoCoTALK. And what do we do in CoCoTALK? Well, we talk about what's happened in the week, what's happened in the community this week, what's going on in the mailing list, what's going on Facebook, what's going on with projects, right? So has anything interesting happened this week by any chance?
No, not really.
Not at all.
All right. So
I would like to abstain from that comment.
Okay, so Wayne Campbell says, hi all, I'm in my car on my Android. Okay, very cool. You gotta love technology, right?
I had to put all my stuff away from last week. That was fun.
Oh yeah, you had a huge setup last week, and we certainly appreciate you setting up Tandy Assembly Arizona edition for us. So that was pretty cool. So let me start off by saying this. What do we have here when we do CoCoTALK? Last week, what did we have? My last count was there were 21 people that were in the Skype call at one point or another, and we easily had a dozen or more of us on all at the same time. Last week's show was probably one of our biggest shows as far as participation levels live. You know what I mean? And it was really cool. And I went it because I had to edit the show and turn it into the audio version. I got to listen to it, and I'm pretty sure that last week was maybe one of my favorite shows because it was probably the first time where it literally was just like a complete ongoing conversation. I mean, yes, we are a talk show, but I think sometimes when the cameras are on, you get self-conscious and you think. I think we were definitely just a lot more free-flowing and just having great conversations. And I really enjoyed listening to it again. There was a lot of people laughing. A lot of information was shared. And I don't think there was a greater moment where that sense of community was captured than right then and there. It was really kind of magical, you know. And I think that we have that in a lot of respects. But when we talk about the community, the color computer being a community, well, what are we? We're a bunch of different people, different parts of the world, different interests, the whole 9 yards. We do have one thing in common. We're crazy enough to still be interested in and use a 30-year-old machine. So we have that one thing in common.
Yeah, the passion is in common.
Yeah, and the very strong opinion, I think, is in common, but is everybody of the same like mind? I mean, I think that's impossible, right? You get two people together, you're lucky if one of them's going to agree with the other one, you know? When you get 100 people or 1,000 people, there's going to be these different things. And I'm somewhat new to it. You know, I've been involved in this maybe 2 years. I've heard of a lot of dramatic things that have happened in the past. I've missed them all. We've seen little slices of it here and there in the 2 years that I've been here. But, I mean, I think as human beings, we are creatures of habit. And I think a lot of us, I think the resistance to change is a natural thing, right? And I know we've had some of that here, even in our own little group, right? Simon's calling in now too. Boisey's joined us, you know. So I'm going to use I'm going to use ourselves, and no matter how close a group of people are, there's going to be discontent and disagreement within that group. So we experience it ourselves here in our little CoCoTALK inner circle quite a bit. So it's not, and we're fairly close. We're not strangers. We're not random people. So even in our close circle, we're going to experience these different opinions and stuff, you know, and I have my opinions and how things should be. I like a slight level of organization to these conversations, and so I've always found Skype to be somewhat chaotic and without even giving it a chance, and I think we see this kind of going on right now. So I'll go ahead and shut up now and let somebody else say something.
Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, there has been incidents like this in the past. There will be in the future, to be honest. I've seen a couple of times way back in the day where actually people left the community permanently due to an argument or a fight with other people in the community, and I don't want to see that happen again. And I'm not going to go into any details about it, but I think it's both a positive and negative. The fact that or the projects in the CoCo in general, I think really points to a positive in the community that people are that passionate and are still that passionate over software, hardware, whatever it happens to be. It's too bad that we can't all agree on everything, but like you said, everybody's different and everybody's, what they're trying to steer towards on their own hobby. And I think that's one thing we have to remember. This is a hobby thing. I mean, for some people, it's a bit of a business. So there's, there's some other things that come into play there. But for the most part, people are trying to make their own system the best as to what they want. And that is what the passion is doing, is helping you get towards that. But that's not going to be the same as the next person. And there's no fault in that. And that's one thing I think we have to realize, that there are different ways to skin a cat.
Mm-hmm. Right. And it looked like Boisey was cooking something there in the kitchen there for a minute. I saw a little pot brewing.
I'm trying to get my camera adjusted, so I just turned it off, guys.
Yeah. Whatever that was, it looked like it had the potential to be something good.
I don't know. I thought he was getting ready to actually cook the cat. Now
that we've done skinning it, right?
The Roadkill Cafe, yep.
Yeah. I think on the plus side, we are a global community. I think there's a lot of different people around the world that we all kind of have some interests. When do you feel like you're closest with your brothers and sisters? I mean, I definitely think if you're together at CoCo Fest, you really feel connected. When we were at Tandy Assembly, we feel connected. When we get here on Skype, it feels like we're kind of a group. But yeah, the concept of the Great Divide, or creating a divide, or contributing to a divide, I've heard that question a lot. I know on one of our earlier episodes of this show, I had posted a thread to the mailing list where I just had some questions about, well, what does it mean to be a member of this community, and what do people expect, and this and that and the other. And we had some good feedback on that, and that was a topic a while ago. On the one hand, we have the serious users, and then we have the recreational users, right? And so right there's two different schools of thought, and maybe some people fit into both of those categories. We have people who make hardware, we have people who make software, we have people who create content. There's a lot of people contributing, and I have a feeling that it's maybe some of the people who are contributing these things maybe have that little extra level of sensitivity, where if this contribution is perhaps not as well received, or even worse, poo-pooed upon, then that wound might not be healed yet.
Yeah, I think that's true, because there's more effort to making hardware than just some software. Right.
So Glen, you've been contributing things. Your Pac-Man transcode recently, and so based on what you've been doing, what's your kind of feelings been? You feel like you've been fairly unanimously embraced and accepted, and has your reception been fairly positive?
Oh yeah, definitely, absolutely.
Was there any time when you maybe said, "Hey, I'm thinking about converting Pac-Man," and somebody would say, "Well, why would you want to do that? And is that even possible?" Or did you ever hear any of that? And you brought it up?
Luckily, I haven't.
Okay.
I remember even John asking me on the CoCo Crew podcast about that, and saying, "No, everybody was cool with it. Nobody had anything about it." And even asked me if Mark McDougall, who did the Space Invaders, had a problem with me doing another Space Invaders.
Things that really blew my mind was hearing about how when Sockmaster created Donkey Kong, and later on Donkey Kong Remix, how poorly it was received. It was almost like nobody cared. He kind of felt like he maybe it kind of got like a flatline response from people.
You mean the original Donkey Kong, or
one or both? I don't remember, because we talked to him not too long ago about this. But he just kind of felt like, he put it out there and didn't really feel like he had a warm reception at all to it.
Wow. Yeah, and it's kind of funny, because I remember when he released it, I mean, the few of us that did pipe up were incredibly stunned by it, of course. I kind of made the joke way back when that the reason that he never got so much response on the list and stuff was because people's jaws were still on the floor and they just couldn't think of anything to say. and to be honest, I think that's partly true. I mean, when you see something really awesome, you don't have to effusively praise it. You just play it all the time. You don't have time to talk about it. So, I mean, sometimes silence I don't think is necessarily a bad thing, but if you're looking for feedback, then you feel it is.
Yeah, and that's
true. It's always nice to hear that, people are using whatever you made. You like, anyways, with my Pac-Man transcode, I definitely did that for my own, right? I just wanted to learn more about the CoCo and Pac-Man itself and stuff, and that was great. And then I knew in the back of my mind, if I get this working, I can share it with everybody else and they can have fun playing it. So, it was another level or to it, I guess, in that regard. But yeah, if I got a bunch of people saying, "Hey, don't bother making Pac-Man, make your own new game," or something like that, just like, it wouldn't stop me, but it probably would hurt when I shared it with everybody. It's like, well, I know there's some negativity out there.
Right. So. And by the way, Eddy Szczerbinski, how are you?
Oh, hello.
How are you? We don't get to have you on the show very often, so it's good to see you.
Do you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you fine.
Great. Oh, thanks. Well, I'm doing well, and thanks for all that you are doing, Stevie.
Oh, my pleasure.
And I'm always amazed at how serious people can be with old stuff like that. Sometimes I think I'm crazy, but I see that I'm not the only one. Personally, I'm more of the purist type, and I don't really get into newer things that are done for the CoCo. I try to stay with the original stuff, and mostly the CoCo 2, because when I stopped using the CoCo, I switched to what I call the CoCo 4, which was the 10D1000EX.
Okay.
So I never really used the CoCo 3. So I'm more of a CoCo 2 and a CoCo 1 fan. But I am somewhat, how can I say, I hope that this thing doesn't evolve anymore and solves in a peaceful way, it's everybody can do what they want. It's a hobby, and
right.
I mean, that's all,
Yeah, and I mean, you just pointed out, like, your perspective is that a CoCo 1 and 2 is your part of the hobby that you enjoy the most, and you don't really care too much about the rest of it. That's not a diss on the rest of it. It's just that's your focus.
Right. I'm in a similar boat because I got the Tandy 1000 right around the same time the CoCo 3 came out, so I didn't really experience the CoCo 3 when it was a current thing. I'm only experiencing it now. So most of my fondest memories are from the CoCo 1 and 2 era and most of those games. And when I programmed on BASIC, I programmed on a CoCo 1 and 2. So that's kind of my kind of time capsule life experience. I'm enjoying the hell out of the CoCo 3 now, but I didn't have an original frame of reference, so it's not deeply ingrained in me as much as it might be for others. But we're certainly glad to have you, and I know we talk a lot on Facebook, and so we're talking about the community right now, and you are one more member of our community. And I love the accent too, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Well, it depends on the day. Sometimes I have, sometimes I have more accent. Sometimes I have less. And I should say that the only thing that is more modern that I use a lot is the CoCo SDC,
yes.
Which is, I think, I sometimes I feel ashamed of using it, but
it's a guilty pleasure.
It's a guilty pleasure, exactly.
Yes. It's like I'm cheating. I'm putting something modern and something retro.
I should use the cassette.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. This drives cheating. What are you talking about?
Code it in manually. Just keep punching in as octal and talk to the CPU direct.
You don't need a screen. You just need LED lights.
It is something. So let's talk about the mailing list for just a second, because it's a new concept to me. It's not new to you guys, and I missed out on modems too on the CoCo, because again, I kind of jumped over to the Tandy 1000. When I got into bulletin board systems, it was on the PC, so I didn't have a previous CoCo online experience where a lot of you have that legacy and those memories. So to me, the mailing list seems very outdated as far as a communication tool, if you will, but it also serves a great purpose. I think a lot of things get done. People people post things and they get answers, and so it's useful. But in my opinion, I find the mailing list is not an effective way for me to gauge a response. If I post something and I don't get a reply, I have no idea how many people read it. I have no idea if I'm falling on deaf ears. Or at least with Facebook, if you post something, you have the little like, and you can see that something got a like. And as lame as it sounds, it is a form of acknowledgement or form of validation. Not that you're looking for this popularity contest, but it's just really, did somebody hear me? It's really just that much. And you don't know if you're being heard on that list unless you get responses. I have found that when I post things to the list that are mostly promotional related, like here's a new video, or here's this, or here's that, most of those things go largely unanswered. So for me, my experience with the list is it's mostly a vacuum. It's mostly a very quiet, isolated place that doesn't get a lot of response. But on the other hand, you'll find people who will pontificate at length over the legalities of, can we use this ROM, and when is this ROM going to be allowed to be used? And that'll get 1,000 replies on something that literally we can continue to talk about it, and it's a great discussion, but it's not going to change anything. So sometimes you'll get a long, hot conversation on things that can't be controlled or changed. You'll see that. My experience with the mailing list this week, and going back and reading how I started my opening statement, I actually kind of invited it without realizing that I invited it. But my intent was basically to say this: hey, listen, I'm going to create this forum, and let's see if anybody wants to use it. And that's the short story of it. That turned into 40 or 50 responses about the forum. And and I'll be honest here. Yeah, there were some things that kind of rubbed me the wrong way about some of the lack of positive responses. But to kind of frame those, my frustration wasn't like, well, somebody doesn't like me or somebody. It wasn't a personal thing, like how dare you not like what I'm proposing. That wasn't the frustration part. The frustration part was that the minute you brought something up, it was immediately just either dismissed or poo-pooed upon without any further thought. And that whole concept there of just no, this is not good, no, it's bad, it's going to fail, that attitude and that mentality, that's the part that frustrated me, and so from my own experience this week, trying to suggest something and propose something that may or may not be of benefit, and having a lot of people just get into tirades about certain things, that was eye-opening. And at the end of the day, it's kind of like what I asked Glen: would anything have changed your mind? And Glen's answer was no. He would have made it anyways, and it hasn't changed my mind, but it has made me aware of the fact that the same people who will not respond to me saying, like, well, I'm going to give you another example. I would post something saying, hey, here's a website I've created, and I'm looking for input on things I can post to this website to be a community service. Does anybody have any links I can put on my website? That will get next to no responses. So again, trying to ask for people to contribute something positive, you don't get. But when you post something out there and you get a lot of negativity, that is the frustration part for me. There seems to be a natural tendency to kind of jump on something the wrong way, and I found that frustrating. I didn't find it as a personal attack. It wasn't about somebody doesn't like me, so now I have to be defensive. It was just really like, this is a crappy attitude. That was my kind of take on it.
Steve, it's the typical thing that's been going on for decades in the computer communication, the community, of where basically you have to motivate somebody. And it's easier for somebody to get motivated on something they don't like, opposed to something that they're mild about. They're not going to comment on it like that. But you basically, I don't like that, I've got to say something, I got to stop it. That comes in very strong. I remember that back on CompuServe. Yep. Most of the comments were very negative because that's the thing that motivated. The thing is, if somebody's liking an idea or they're lukewarm to the idea, they're not going to say anything. The only way that you're going to get somebody to sing the praises of an idea is it worthy of a gospel song?
Acquiring stream. All right. Okay, I think we're back. That was odd. Had an odd issue with the live stream, so hopefully we are back. And sorry about that. All right, and I forgot who was speaking last. I lost my train of thought.
I think I was just agreeing with Boisey that
don't ask for permission. Don't ask for permission.
Don't ask for permission. You can ask for suggestions if you want, but you don't have to follow any of them.
Right.
You have to do the project for yourself, and then you can share it, whether you share it commercially or if you share it freely, doesn't matter, and let people take it up or not take it up, and not worry about whether they do or not. That's not your concern. Your concern should be your project for your own purposes.
Right.
But sometimes it can actually turn into something that you do sell. So that's the bonus, right? it
Yeah.
turns into
Yeah.
something that
Yeah.
you want.
Yeah, and so, so some of you have this experience going back to Delphi and CompuServe. So obviously it sounds like this is nothing new. This is somewhat human behavior, for better or for worse. We're not perfect creatures. And I like kind of Boisey saying, I'm not asking for permission. I'm just going to do it. I kind of have that similar philosophy to things I just do in life in general too. And I'm kind of unique in the fact that I don't necessarily need acceptance or validation. I would almost rather have no feedback than strictly negative feedback. I think that would be worse, But yeah, like I wasn't looking for approval on doing this. I was more like saying, well, here it is. But I just find it interesting that when you propose what could be a tool, something that may or may not be of benefit, that you throw out the word like, well, this is going to divide the community. I mean, I think we're already divided. We're at least divided into like the serious and the casual, and the OS 9 and the disk extended color basic. I won't even call it RS DOS. You have those different silos of users. I find it so. Then we get into hardware, right? And there's people making hardware. And there's a lot of overlap in some of these hardware solutions. And I know this has been brought up on the CoCo crew about projects and, how do you handle when a lot of people want to work on the same project. And to my knowledge right now, one of the groups of people that have been making hardware the longest have been like Cloud9 Technology, which I know Boisey is you're in some aspect you're associated with them, right, Boisey, and maybe Mike Rowan too, to a bit. So Cloud9's been making hardware for a long time. So Cloud9 has been making, memory upgrades and CoCo expansions and things like that. But other people are making hardware now too. So is the fact that somebody else is going to make hardware, is that quote unquote competition? And Jim Brain's not with us right now, but Jim Brain's making memory upgrades, which, does anybody own the rights to an upgrade? Does anybody own the rights to this? I don't think that answer is yes, right? So,
if I can interject, I agree.
Sure.
I think that it's nice to have some deference to the people who have been in the community a little longer. You don't have to ask permission, but I know in the case of Jim and Mark have had conversations, positive conversations about what Jim is working on,
right,
just to make sure that they don't, conflict with each other. And of course, Mark's very accommodating to that.
Mm-hmm.
But it is nice to kind of have that communication. I think a lot of these misunderstandings come up because people just don't see each other face to face.
Right.
In a social setting, get along, know each other more than just superficially on Facebook.
Right. It's almost like pedestrian traffic versus in a car. It's like, and when I'm on the road, everybody's an idiot. But if you see them face to face,
Right.
It's like.
Exactly.
Well, hey, this is Brendan. So I've got something to say kind of about that same concept too. Like CoCo VGA, for example, had been started a number of years ago, and I just never announced it, because I kind of didn't need any more pressure or impetus to work on it or anything like that. I didn't want to be committing to anything. But I remember, a couple of years ago, Ed started talking about, well, gee, I'd like to work on a VGA project that that samples the analog output from the 6847 or from the modulator, and then we redigitize it and turn it into VGA and output it. And since he was talking about that, I said, well, I could he's it's a free country, he can go do what he wants. But instead, I contacted him and I said, hey, I've got this solution that's mostly working. I need a board to put it on, because my my contraption that I have it hanging off of the CoCo right now is not, signal integrity issues and stuff like that. So at that point he said, well, yeah, that sounds like a good solution. Let's work together on it. So I guess I would also, I also think that's a potential reasonable approach to trying to avoid stepping on other people's toes.
Yeah.
Greetings, YouTubers. Atari Leaf here, and you're listening to CoCoTALK.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's me. It's Original Gamer Stevie Stroh. You know, gameplay. To get your copy of a Gameplay Goodness Color Computer Gaming DVD today, head on over to 8bit256.com. There you will find several DVDs featuring color computer gameplay videos by the Original Gamer Stevie Stroh. So to get your very own copy of a Gameplay Goodness Color Computer Gaming DVD, head on over to the Retro Swag Shop at 8bit256.com and tell them the Original Gamer Stevie Stroh sent you.
Yeah. And sometimes that's hard to do too, because sometimes you got, two independent parties are working on a similar project, but because they don't want to say anything like you didn't until you have something ready to announce, you might get these two things getting released at the same time and nobody knew that the other person was working on it. And then you kind of go, why didn't we work together on it? Save ourselves both a lot of time and effort.
That's right.
Especially if they're done differently too. I mean, that's part of the current issue, is that there's a couple different solutions that are done a little bit differently too. And I mean, there's some advantages, disadvantages to each. So but also it gets again to being the hobbyist thing where, if you're trying to learn how to do something for yourself and it turns into a project that can be turned into a commercial project, you're still starting it for your own purposes of just, I need to figure out how this works. I want to know how I can hook up a VGA, directly to the VDG and to pull the signal off and digitize it and everything else. It's not a...
Right.
You weren't trying initially, I don't think, to make it a commercial project. You just wanted to figure out how this worked, as a hobbyist would do,
Yeah,
design your proto boards.
I agree completely.
I guarantee you that all of this tension in the CoCo community would go away if I could get everybody over here and cook for them. Everybody would chill out and have a great time and love each other.
Yeah. Come on, people now. Smile on your brother. Everybody get together. Try to love one another right now.
I've had a number of projects that I've tried to introduce, or I'm now working on one that I'm introducing. And yes, the feedback can be a little bit negative, but there's also positive feedback that comes in there. It gets me thinking about things. Like, for example, with the soundboard that I'm developing, I'm going to be interfacing via the serial port on a CoCo, not through the cartridge port. And one gentleman suggested I try and make it compatible with the drive wire protocol, but after looking at everything, good idea, but I don't see any advantage in my project doing that, so I'm not doing it. But it got me thinking about it. So there is something to getting community feedback in a project that you're working on.
Yeah.
Right. For better or for worse, right? So
I can give you an excellent example of that Boisey was involved with, like way back when Nitrous 9 was still a commercial project. Boisey had come up with a suggestion, I think, on one of the CoCo mailing lists on FidoNet or something. I can't remember where it came from. But he had a bunch of things he wanted to do with G-Shell and Multiview. And I took a look at his list. There were some things that I didn't think I would be able to handle at the time. There's some other things I said I don't really agree with it. But there were some really excellent ideas in there, and I actually did incorporate them into G-Shell a couple years later. And I think if actually remember, Boisey, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it was quite a few years later, I think, when I did it, like 5 or 6 or something like that. And then when you saw it, you'd actually forgotten you'd actually written that original email with the suggestions.
I've forgotten that even happened. Yeah, my memory's bad. But yeah, I don't doubt it. I kind of remember that, Curtis.
Yeah. And that was one where feedback, like I was just saying, I'm going to start rewriting parts of G-Shell. I was planning on redrawing some of the icons and stuff. Right. And then he had some suggestions for the environment file that are actually incorporated in the current version.
Well, that's a great example of working together to a common goal, I think.
Yeah. When it comes to hardware or software at this point in time, anybody who's making something, for the most part, I don't think people are going to be making a ton of money on this. They're doing it to, like as John Linville likes to say, scratch the itch, and you're making something that hopefully you feel will be of benefit to some other people. And maybe you'll make a couple bucks on it, but it's not the days of Radio Shack where there was a 40% margin on this and you were selling thousands of units.
Yeah, you're not going to make a living on it now.
Right.
Yeah.
Unless you're Nick.
So you have Cloud9, who is, for lack of better terms, this is an established company. This is a company that sells this. Now, it's a company basically one person for the most part. It is, but the quality of the product is commercial quality. The craftsmanship, the workmanship, the warranty, the support behind it is probably better than you would get from some bigger companies. So a company like Cloud9 is well known, well respected, trusted. I think Jim Brain has definitely achieved that same level with Go4 Retro. I think Ed Snyder has definitely achieved that level of respect on what he has made and the things he's contributed. The CoCo SDC, we know there's over 500 units of these things being sold. So people will buy some stuff. I don't think Ed's making a lot of money on the things that he sells. I don't think he's doing it for profit. There is an amount of time you have to spend working on these things, and some of that time is in maybe the assembly, or even if you're not assembling it, the designing and the testing and the prototyping. So there is time invested, and that time should be compensated. And it's not a sin to sell something to make a little bit of money on it, but I don't think anybody's making a major killing here. Nobody's gouging the community for sure, from what I can see.
Yeah. And one thing I want to mention on hardware too, I think something that's changed in the last few years is that you used to have a much higher entry point to get into manufacturing hardware as opposed to just making a board for yourself. Mm-hmm. I mean, you had to have a fair bit of money and a fair bit of equipment to be able to manufacture these boards. Now we've got all this outsourcing stuff that Jim uses and everybody else, and they do all these things for designing circuit boards and stuff. So what you require to make something semi-commercial is much lower than it used to be. And now we've got a lot more competition because of that, which I think is a good thing. But I think that maybe that's part of the divide between the people that have been around for a long time versus the newer ones, is that some of these people may never have been able to afford to try to produce a commercial board 20 years ago, and now you can. So now there's more competition, which I think is a good thing in the long run.
Yeah. One of the things I'd like to key in on that is very true, because look at even my own project. Jim's helped me. John Strong's helped me to understand some of this stuff that when I was getting into it. So they've been helpful in helping me understand at what might work better to make something. And of course, I was making it for myself, because if you make it for yourself, other people might want it too. Because if you might want it, they might want it. So,
completely agree.
Yeah, I agree with it as well, because I'm the cables that I'm making, I'm most of it I'm doing just for myself and for my own personal use, and I'm sharing that with the community. But it'd be great if I had enough money to make a down payment on my Rolls Royce. So
yeah, you have to talk to Nick about his 2 Ferraris he's got. I mean, yeah, they're Matchbox, but still.
Right. So, I don't want to make this about me, but I just want to get the opinions of the people here, and I don't want anybody to play favorites. So I want to have an open and honest discussion here. So our 2 major ways of communicating right now are Facebook and the mailing list. So the fact that I've proposed this forum, and the forum exists, and people are on it, and they're using it, how do you guys feel that the fact that this thing exists, that it's now going to take people away from Facebook or anything else? What is, what's the basis on that?
I think if it's going to work like any of the other communities that have been formed or gone away over the years, I think you're going to get certain types of people will kind of gravitate towards it, and you'll find that each one gets a bit more specific as to what part of the community they're addressing. Like the CoCo mailing list, if you're a diehard OS9er, that's the place to be, because that's where a lot of us have been since day one. Facebook is a lot more of the gamers and stuff. They tend to go to the Facebook page. Your forum might end up with a specialty in something else. And not to say that that's the only thing that will be discussed in those venues, but I think they do tend to coalesce eventually into having their own subspecialties within the community. And if you want to talk about a certain thing, you'll probably get more answers going to the community that tends to gravitate towards that specific subject than if you just blindly post it on Facebook or blindly post it on the list.
Facebook is also a good place for first point of contact. There's a lot of brick and mortar businesses that have a Facebook page just so people can find them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can go and see who, if they have a family or not, or the kinds of things they post. It gives you an idea what the guy's interested in, or girl.
Right.
And the other thing is, for me, when I usually talk to somebody, you can't carry a conversation on Facebook, so you generally go to Messenger and then have a nice conversation one-on-one. And I guess you're just one-on-one. You can't really bring anybody else in, or you don't usually. So I think going to that forum would be great, because then other people just jump in.
Messenger supports groups. You can have multiple people on.
Yeah,
Yeah. But, the thing is, as far as Facebook goes, it's easy for me to get the color computer community stuff going on there, because I have to go to Facebook for my business. I have to go for it for personal. So when I flow into Facebook and I hit my news feed, I'm going to see certain articles about the CoCo community intermixed with everything. And that keeps pulling you in. That's why it's kind of sticky. In the case of the list, well, true, you're going to get emails brought down, or you're going to be whatever you're going to use to view the list, you use the list, but generally you have to kind of go there for that. And the thing is true, Steve, with what you've done with your new list, you have to go there to get that messages.
Yeah.
On the other hand, there are diehards that, if due to privacy reasons or just a disagreement with the Facebook in general, refuse to sign up on Facebook. Never mind signing up on a list. They don't want to sign up on Facebook because they figure Facebook's going to sell all their information for advertising and everything else. And there's been some proof of that happening on all the various social forums. So, I mean, I kind of understand some of their points. And if they just signed up with some generic login that they don't put a lot of personal to them.
Yeah. And that's what I tell all those diehards that are security. Create a user that has nothing on it. And don't reference it other than for Facebook, and you're fine.
Yeah.
Kind of a dummy account, right?
Well, don't forget, your biggest issue is not with Facebook, it's your ISP, because your ISP knows everything and everywhere you go, and they're the ones who can sell that information now with the changes that were made in the FCC recently.
Yeah, in the States, that's not anywhere else in the world that I know of.
Yeah.
No, it's just true. I mean, that was just a bad decision on their part, but I don't think anybody else is doing that.
Let's not go down the politics road.
One more thing to not agree on.
Well, I believe that
one other issue. One other issue.
Yep.
Oops, sorry. One other issue is I get I didn't fix it properly, but Discord will send you notices all day, because different people chat on Discord at all different times of the day.
Yeah.
In the different areas, I have to figure out how to make that quiet.
Yeah, that's actually under the notification options under the actual specific server settings. You can actually set it so that it will only notify you if someone mentions you.
Yeah.
But as far as the forum part, or Discord, or Skype, people prefer certain areas, like has already been talked. But for me, I like Facebook, don't get me wrong. I like the list. There's annoyances about each that drive me ape, and one of the things with Facebook, it's a here and now, right on the spot. You can see when someone posts something within a few seconds. But if you want to go back and find it a month later, something that might have been posted, good luck easily finding it on Facebook. Right. And as far as the list, there's a few glitches, and I don't know if it's because of the email clients people use there. And it's when someone replies, instead of it being kept in that thread, that grouping, when someone replies, it gets made as a new thread, which then now you got like 5, 6, 10 threads that are the same topic. Now you got to look at all of them to see who's communicating and where updated information is. So that's one of my other little, miffs or annoyances with that. But there's good points for each. The forum was something that I thought would be, at least from my standpoint, you can go to the forum. The topics will stay in its topic unless someone creates a new topic to put information in.
Right.
And then it stays there, and you can just easily search or go right down the list, search for the topic, see it, and then see all the messages under it.
Right.
Which,
Here,
from my standpoint...
I'm going to put it on screen. So give me just a second here. No, I agree. Keep talking. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah. No problem. So it's I believe there's room for all three. It's just there's just certain things that I think that having a forum is good for, because then you can easily get back to it. You can easily find it. Facebook, like I said, is for the here and now. You get the current news, you get the current thing, but then, and then the list is similar in that way, but, it just depends on what you prefer.
Right.
Well, that's the thing that you're talking about here is you're looking at, is it sticky to use? In other words, the way Facebook is, you're constantly in there, you're constantly getting the stuff. Or is the information sticky where you can go back and find it? And Facebook, as you say, is not based around that. But the same problem that you run in with the forums is the forums are dying because Facebook, everybody's merging over there.
Sure.
Yeah, because we did have CoCo forums before in the past,
right? And that's been brought up. There's been brought up that it's been, is it worth mentioning that? Well, yes, this was tried before and it failed. Yeah, maybe that's worth mentioning. But just because something failed once, does that mean it's going to fail again? And again, how do you measure success? And this was my whole thing. I don't need 1,000 people to use this. It costs me nothing for this to exist. And if 5 people use it, and if 5 people are benefiting from it, then that's success enough for me.
That's a net positive.
It's a positive. It was actually requested or suggested because of the challenges that Facebook does pose. And yes, is it one more place that you have to go? Yeah, or you don't have to, but you can. And so if anybody's not familiar with what a forum looks like, this is what it looks like currently. There's different categories, and if there's a new post, it'll be yellow, and you could see who made the last post. So Bosco made the last post under general discussions, and I can see that there's something new here because it's orange, and I can click on the little page icon, and here's his post. So so he's just commenting on the fact where I said, well, this is now publicly searchable so anybody can read it. It was before, and listen, this is new. I've never made one of these things before, so we're having to figure this crap out, right? But we got it to the point where you can see it. And so it's here, and there's different categories, so the downside or some of the things that were brought up were, well, what happens if you lose your hosting account? And sure, that's possible, but in my case here, my hosting account is what I run my business on. So if I lose my hosting account, I've got bigger issues than the forum, because my corporate website and email will come through here, things like that. Because it is my own forum, I'm not limited to maybe what a public forum might have. So we've opened this up where we could do large attachments. So the idea was maybe we could use this as a file repository too. So it could be kind of like our own little mini GitHub or file sharing place. We've got control over it. We're not limited by what other things might use, and I don't know. There's a few people using it. I'm not gonna judge this as a failure until it becomes a failure, and my threshold for failure is gonna be pretty low, where it's not gonna be a failure unless 0 people use it ever. If 2 people log in once a week, that's not a failure to me.
Hey everybody, this is Bill Noble, co-author of Nitrous 9. You are listening to CoCoTALK Live, the leading live CoCoTALK show.
What's going on, everybody? The original gamer Stevie Stroh here, and I want to talk to you about I'mACoconut.com. If you love the color computer like I love the color computer, then you got to visit I'mACoconut.com, your one-stop shop for all of your Tandy color computer links needs. There you'll find links to blogs and podcasts and project sites and emulators and downloads and groups and communities. If you love the color computer, head on over to I'mACoconut.com. That's IMACoconut.com. Tell them the original gamer Stevie Stroh sent you. CoCo forever, people.
So
well, right now you don't have one of the major problems. I'll explain what that problem is in a second. But basically, you're new, it's shiny. People come in there, they'll post things. eventually it's not going to be so new and shiny and people will forget about it, so you have that stickiness problem. But the real thing is you need to get some sort of login, because as soon as the spammers find out you exist, you're going to get loaded with spam.
Yeah, and that's what happened to the previous forums.
Yeah.
And some of the lists, for that matter.
Right.
So literally 90% of the messages were spam and trolls and not any real content. So that you have to keep an eye on.
Right. So that, I guess we'll have to address the growing pains as they happen.
I've actually ran several forums throughout the 30 plus years, because I've also was a sysop and I was on FidoNet. But yeah, for as far as to have a successful forum, you need to have really good moderators, and not just ones that will enforce the rules, but also that will engage conversations, keep conversations going. People, to have them come and want to come back and to respond, and to be active, and to also to where it becomes a routine for them to come every day or every other day to look at things, because forums are really good to look at when you want to solve problems. And if they're really active, then I can, it's very easy to search through those forums, and then, someone else might also have the same problem that I might have had.
Right. That was another thing.
And big companies still use those. I mean, Apple still has forums. You can go ask questions. Microsoft still has forums. You can ask questions. Adobe does.
Yeah, FreeBSD has a very active forum as well. So.
All right. Well, let's move now forward to. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Boisey. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, I did this as
Eddy. Eddy.
I think what I like the most about an idea about the forum is the fact that we can search, and as being a lot less experienced than most of you are, I have to search maybe more often for help about technical issues or software issues. And what I like a lot about the idea of having all that on a searchable system, that's a very good, that's a very, very important plus to me.
Right. Well, the time will be the ultimate jury there, but yeah, the potential is definitely there.
But I have to tell you that you have to be careful, because when I open my landline BBS system, I can tell you it's going to be so popular that everything will close down.
The landline BBS system?
Well, it's a little dream I have, and I'm working on it right now. So if anybody wants to hop in and help, I basically want to keep it very simple, and I want to try to find some ways to keep it only for CoCos.
Yeah, I'm experiencing. Yeah, people are mentioning the lag is really bad, and I agree too. I'm having a lot of that issues, so I don't know if maybe we want to kill some of the cameras that don't need to be on. Definitely getting a lot of lag and buffering on my end. I'm seeing it. I'm watching this on my laptop, and I've lost the stream several times on the viewing side. So maybe we should just kind of kill our cameras. I'm going to also.
Steve, can I just say something about the forums? Like, so far, I've been on there quite a bit last week, and started posting up some stuff. And Rick Adams put on some source code, which was great for just some little tutorial stuff on the CoCo 3 and stuff. And it got me looking at it and just talking about LWSM, which he mentioned he's using, and he's new to it. So I just mentioned a few things that I found out about it that are useful, and then one of them was like for branching. This is kind of technical, but for branching, when you're doing assembly language, you always have to have a label and stuff. But one nice feature in LWSM was that you can use a greater than or less than sign to branch to an exclamation mark in your code instead of having to come up with a new label every time.
Okay.
So I mentioned that in the post, and then Bosco wrote back saying he never knew that. So
right.
So boom, that information's out there. It's like,
and now it's there forever. It's there
that?
forever. Yeah.
So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
I think at least maybe I have a different perspective because I'm going to be using the forum for development stuff. So I think a forum is awesome for that because then you can share code and ideas and bounce them back and forth. Like you can't do that on Facebook. And even on the mail list, it's really hard to get people to go back and forth on conversations. And then you're going to have the issue David Ladd was talking about too, where the conference or conversations get split apart. The thread, just gets
when you posted a link to Facebook with one of your forum articles, and it was brought up that we hope you're not going to stop blogging. I mean, so you're not going to stop blogging, right? Well,
right.
We hope. So I guess we want to make sure, and that's another thing too, like you've got a blog, everybody's got a blog. So when you talk about something that might be spreading apart the focus and the interest and having to force people to go to more places, the fact that everybody's got their own blog, that is already forcing you to have to go somewhere else to read that blog. And not that that's a bad thing, but if you can bring things into one place, and now you can kind of update us with what you're doing before you put it on your blog. We don't have to look at 5 different blogs either.
Yeah.
So I don't know. And
like the summary.
I don't want to make this show about the forum, or it's not about me, but it's one of the topics that's happened this week. One of
the things I also wanted to bring about the forum, and also when you talk about blogs and things like that, one of the other keys to make it successful is make sure that the forum and the blogs are Google search friendly, because a lot of people, when they have problems, that's the first thing they go to is they do a search on Google. And so if it's friendly enough, yours will probably pop up in one of the first 2-3 slots, and they'll go to that as well. So
yeah, and I think it's either David Ladd and both Mark Overholser said they may have done some things to make that happen.
I already the Google engine, so it knows about it.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess we're getting some feedback now that the buffering is less now that we've all killed our cameras. Or everybody but Ron Delvaux at this point.
Well, that's your other problem. Is David involved in this forum thing?
Yeah, David.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah,
never mind. I'm out. Sorry.
Now listen here.
David's got his hands in everything. Have you not figured that out yet?
No, Grant. No, don't go there.
David's like the 1%. They control everything.
But as far as the forum, I did make sure that also every forum category has access to read only for the bots. So that way, like the Google search engines or whatever can categorize the forums. So they at least have access to read them.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, because a lot of people biggest mistake when they put a forum up, they just put it up and they expect the people just to show up, and then they, again, like somebody mentioned, it's a shiny new toy and it just doesn't get off the ground, and they just stop going.
And this will actually help your numbers, I think, too, because the people that are searching for questions who may not even know about the greater CoCo community will be able to discover it this way.
Right. Hey, Ron, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Can you kill your camera? Just click on the little...
I can't because I have my screen is blank.
Ah, okay.
I'm working on trying to hook up a different computer, but...
Okay, no problem. Well, you're the only camera, so we've definitely improved our bandwidth at this point, so that's cool. All right, so I do want to move past the forum topic for right now, though, when you guys are ready.
Steve, can I add one thing?
Yeah.
One thing that helps with search engine optimization is external links to the forum. So if anybody has their own website or that's indexed by Google or whatever else, or blogging or whatever, put a link to the forum, and then it'll get rated in there, and that'll help.
Okay. All right. Yeah, let's move past the forum. So let's move on now to let's talk about the audio hardware discussion that's going on right now. The big 300-pound elephant, the 900-pound gorilla. Now, when these things came up a while ago, and they were just mentions, the thought that entered my mind, and we brought it up on this show, was the fact that we're already talking about fragmentation in a market that technically doesn't even exist yet. But there's different people have come up with different sound solutions. And again, the fact that we have choices, that's great. The fact that people are making these things, that's great. We have these accessories, they're available to us. How they're going to be used or leveraged is going to be determined. But it was already on my mind, and we talked about it, that, we got, Ed Snyder's got a sound chip. John Linville's got a sound chip. Jim Brain was proposing a sound chip on something else he was doing. So John Strong was working on a sound chip.
Steve Bjork.
Now Steve Bjork is now talking about one. So there's different options. And so now we have different options. Well, number one, who's going to buy them and why are they going to buy them? Number two, who's going to develop for them? Because there's only so many people developing anything right now. We're getting 1 to 2 games per year. There's the people who are actively developing new original retail CoCo games. You can count them on one hand right now. And so, what is the market? So we're worried about either competition or whatever the case may be, but so far, as to my knowledge, not many sound solutions have been sold, and 0 games have been developed for any of these sound solutions. So what is the actual competition right now with this?
Well, I think you have to get the hardware solutions out and available so people can start development on them. You can't just discuss hardware specs and then hope somebody you have to have something to test it on.
Right.
I mean, adding John Linville having the support added to MAME, I think, was a big help, because at least some people that don't have the physical hardware can attempt to develop for it. I mean, they would want to still test it on real hardware eventually, but that's a nice boon for developers. But yeah, you're right. There's not that many developers. I mean, hate to get into the OS9 versus Disk Extended Basic controversy here, but one of the reasons for OS9's existence is to be able to extract hardware from software, so that basically you can write a program that will just call a sound routine and it'll use whatever chip driver you have. And that's one of the reasons it worked so well in the 90s when we were doing all these new hardware projects like ID and SCSI and everything else.
Right.
So that might actually be an advantage in this case. I mean, I've noticed that Boisey's actually submitted some changes to use Brendan's 64x32 VDG in Nitrous 9 for level 1. So that'll be coming out for support right away, and all of a sudden that's ready to go. I don't see too much except for demos on the RSDOS side yet. So, I mean, I think there could be some stuff done on the OS9 side that would make it a bit easier for people to develop for it. They don't have to worry about writing specific hardware stuff. But where do all the best games show up? Under Disk Extended Basic. So I don't know if people want to try to support both, or even a third one if more come online, But I mean, both of them also have strengths and weaknesses for certain situations. Like, do you want it something you can call from a disk-based game? Do you want to run it on a cartridge? I mean, that comes into play as well.
Right. So, Ed Snyder's made a lot of hardware for the community. He's made, obviously, he's producing now the CoCo SDC. He's come up with a multi-pack. He's come up with various things, memory extenders for the MC10. And he came up with a sound solution. I'm not sure if it's just sound or if it's got multiple things in his cartridge, and he's done some demos. He's got a media player for it. It's a different sound solution using a different chip. It's using the Yamaha chip. I've heard some of the music. It sounds really good. It seems kind of cool, and it's a neat thing to have. But then you ask yourself, well, what is going to be done with it, Now, what John Linville has been doing for a while now is he has produced the ability to create cartridges. It's not just John, but a bunch of people got together on the cases. We've got the injection molded cases. He's come up with a circuit board design where we can put things on a cartridge. And then he's come up with a sound chip that you can put on that cartridge too. That's a very low point of entry on the cost of production, and it really has almost created this turnkey solution that's called the Game Master Cartridge, where you can create a cartridge, you've got a ROM slot, you've got a sound chip, you've even got bank switching, so you can address larger ROM games like what we had with the RoboCop, where you can break the 32K ROM barrier. So theoretically have a 128K or 512K game on ROM cartridge, and it's there. And so if you're somebody now who's like my frustration with coming up with the idea for a forum is I've basically said, here's something that may or may not be of benefit to the community, and you get a lot of people who are going to immediately attack it. Now, John Linville has created a lot of things that could be benefit to the community. And now the way I see it is this, is that you're trying to lead a horse to water by saying, here's something you can use. And the problem we have with these horses is they're not interested in the water. They want to debate, well, do I want water? Is water a good thing? Is this the water I want to have? Would I rather burn to death in the desert?
We have to add lemon to it.
Yes, they've never had water before. Why do we need water now? Why has changed? So you have this well-intended, almost all-encompassing solution to create a cartridge. Not only that, but they've even got a turnkey production, because Rick Adams' bomb threat was produced on cartridge and was sold at Tandy Assembly. So they're even, not only do they offer the ability for people to make cartridges, they're offering a turnkey solution to package them for you with cheap Canadian labor. So you've got that out there, and I can't help but wonder, why would people not see the value in here? Why would people not want to look at this as a positive and poo-poo on it? Then that could be frustrating. Now, one of the obstacles that was brought up is, well, how do I test this? How can I develop for this if it's a hardware-based solution? And that was even addressed by producing the ability to develop for this in MAME. So the ability to develop for the Game Master cartridge in MAME exists, and this cross-development and all the tools are there. They were put out there. They were given to everyone, and yet somehow, again, it's like when I post to the mailing list, sometimes the stuff just goes into a vacuum. Nobody gets it. Nobody sees the value. Nobody wants to say anything positive about it. But it was sitting there forever. It was just sitting there as, here's a solution. Here's something you can pick up and use. And it was out there. And then I think what's happened recently, and hey, Ed Snyder has just joined us. And if you want to join us in the call. So that solution was there, kind of given to developers, right? And then recently it was posted where, here's a development kit if somebody wants to develop for this other hardware. And I think that's where this current thing has come to a head, where it's like, I've already had something I've given to the community. And now is this kind of viewed as, for lack of a better term, competition. And again, my question is, what is the competition when there is no... there's really not a market for that. Now, John Linville was going to join us, but what he did do is he gave me something. I'm going to read his words exactly because I don't want to paraphrase anything. And so here's this John's perspective on this, where he basically said, so earlier this week, Ed offered a deal with his CoCo PSG for developers, while others, including Ed, may disagree. In my honest opinion, this was a somewhat aggressive move intended to win developer mindshare. And he says, while the CoCo PSG and the Game Master cartridge are quite different designs with different purposes, anyone paying attention ought to acknowledge that they are competitors in terms of winning developers. So I made a similar offer to the community in order to avoid losing developers by default. And then he went on to say that Ed felt compelled to reply ostensibly because I mentioned his name as the designer of the CoCo PSG. I responded to his reply perhaps somewhat dismissively, but I don't see any just cause for Ed to feel insulted. If you do, please point it out explicitly. Then he said, the trolling was ridiculous. Even if you don't like my post, reply with some dignity. Bonus points for avoiding misogyny and sexism or any other isms. Many of the community claim to appreciate lots of choices and competition. I stick by my later comment that it's funny how little some people seem to like competition when there actually is some. So there he goes.
Hey, have you got your CoCo 3 yet? Hi, this is Rick Adams, author of Temple of Rom and Shanghai. And you've tuned into CoCoTALK, the nation's leading live talk show featuring the Tandy color computer.
What's going on, everybody? Original Gamer Stevie Stroh here, and if you're a fan of vintage computing and retro gaming, then you're going to love our retro swag shop at 8bit256.com. There you will find custom designs by Instagram artist Joel M. Adams. You can get I'm a CoCoNut, CoCoTALK, and other cool video game images on a t-shirt, coffee mug, or mouse pad. So if you love retro, then head on over to the retro swag shop at 8bit256.com today. Tell them the Original Gamer Stevie Stroh sent you.
So that was basically John's point on this was, I guess maybe he viewed this as competition, and in order to stay in the game, he offered a similar solution, and I think that's where some of this sound hardware controversy has started.
Okay, Steve, can I chime in for a minute?
Sure thing.
You're talking about not having any backup for this like software stuff. Well, I actually developed a player for John's cartridge a few months ago on its MAME, and that's freely available for anybody that wants it. And I had a discussion with John about the cartridge back in the day, where to me it was okay. This is designed to be purely a ROM cartridge, so if I buy one of these cartridges and I stick it in my CoCo and I want to address the sound chip outside of the ROM, I'd have to do what you'd have to do with an Orchestra 90. You'd have to tape off the auto start or something like that. I mean, if John provided some kind of switch to switch off the ROM, or you didn't need to have a ROM in it, I mean, I can see, personally, benefits with both of them. But my biggest caveat would be, okay, how do I personally program an EEPROM or an EEPROM or a PROM? I mean, I don't have the facilities to stick in a 24-pin DIP and program it.
Right.
You know, but both solutions, I mean, seriously, the SN chip, well, that's cheap as chips. I mean, tiny little 16-pin DIP cost nothing. And both that and the AY, because essentially Ed's YM chip is just a new AY. They're both period correct.
Right.
I like the fact that support for John's chip has been added to MIS MAME. Don't get me wrong. The same with the speech sound cartridge. That's been added to MIS MAME, which would give a developer a head start somewhere. You know,
right.
I can see it from both points of view, and I didn't really feel like dirtying my hands, if you know what I mean, because both things have got good points and bad points. And that's always the way it's going to be.
Right. Now, I want to just back up and thanks for sharing that. I know we're kind of taking two steps back now, but apparently, again, there's an issue with my live stream. So the live stream was interrupted, and so the whole thing I read from John Linville, apparently the people in the live stream saying they didn't hear that. So I'm going to start over one more time at the sake of being repetitious. And so what we're talking about right now is the great sound hardware debate. And again, I'm reading something that John Linville sent me via Facebook Messenger because he couldn't be here. So he was basically saying that earlier this week, Ed offered his sound hardware for developers. And he says this was a somewhat aggressive move in order to win developer mindshare. He kind of saw it as being competition to lose out on something. So he said he offered a similar solution where if you'd like to get a piece of hardware like mine, I've got a few ways you can buy it. You can do it as a do-it-yourself kit. You can get a completely assembled kit. And then he went on to say that Ed was compelled to apply ostensibly because I mentioned him by name. He says, but I don't see any just cause for Ed to feel insulted. And then he mentioned that there was a lot of ridiculous trolling going on. And he says that, the community claimed to appreciate lots of choices and competition, but he says it's funny how little some people seem to like competition when there actually is some. So I think what had happened was when Ed went to share the fact that he's got sound hardware and says, if you want to develop something, I'm going to make a development kit available to you. John wanted to make sure he wasn't lost in the shuffle and offered a similar kit. And then somehow that has rubbed different people different ways, not always the most positive way. But I want to get back to what I was saying before, is that we've got this fragmentation. We've got two different products. And now Simon has mentioned Simon has a player for it where you can play things to it. Now, Ed Snyder also created a player for his. And now Glen Hewlett is working on something. Glen Hewlett's working on something where you can take a MIDI file and convert the MIDI file to play on a lot of different things. And so, am I losing my stream again? I don't know what the hell is going on with my software and my computer today. So right now, I'm watching it on my laptop. It's telling me that the stream is gone again. I don't know what's going on. You guys tell me what's going on with that stream, because I don't know. This is really frustrating.
It's working fine for us.
Yeah. Okay. So that's kind of where we were, is that we ended up in this kind of debate over hardware, debate over competition, debate over did somebody disrespect somebody else by trying to offer something to the community. And I don't think anybody intended to intentionally, disrespect anybody, but obviously, things can be perceived many ways, and that's kind of where we are.
Well, I just
agree.
see this.
Go ahead, Nick.
I see it as normal competition. You see it in supermarkets and everything. When one supermarket advertises a certain product cheaper than the opposition, the next thing you have is the opposition knocks their prices down to match them or beat them again. It's just, that's the way
it's just
competition
capitalism.
is.
Well, but I mean, honestly, we're a small community. Who are we competing with at this point?
Well, in our case, I don't think it's so much competition. It's just that we've got Ed, he's created a product, John's created a product. Of course, to get either products to be taken up by programmers or whatever,
you got to give it to them.
The uptake is slow, so Ed just decided to offer his product to those first few products at a reduced price, just to get the interest up.
Sure.
And that's the competition. Well, not so much competition, but he's obviously just trying to promote his product. He's obviously invested money to produce it. Well, not much good if you're not selling either. So he's just trying to make it easier for people to use it, and so we can see, so the CoCo community can actually see new products being developed for his card. John can do the same thing, and I mean, John's cartridge has advantages as well for people who want to create a ROM pack with a sound chip. It's perfect. You can sell a ROM pack with a game. I mean, that's fine. That's that angle. Ed's is different for people who don't want to go to the, say, expense of selling a product on a ROM pack. They just have to buy the one cartridge, and that's it. From the hardware investment side, from there on, they can just buy software that they can download or purchase and download or whatever, even free, whatever, and install it on the onboard flash of that cartridge. You only buy the hardware once, whereas I guess with John's, you buy it every time you want a game. You're purchasing the sound chip each time.
Yeah, and so so by the way, Ed Snyder has just responded to two things in chat, so I'll go ahead and read those off. And Ed, if you want to join us in Skype, we'd love to have you. So Ed Snyder says, I didn't take any offense, but mention me and criticize my project, and I shouldn't respond, meaning yes, I should. And then he says, anyway, I took no offense and I have no beef with John. I'm glad he's getting his out there too. So that sounds like at least a peaceful response there on Ed's side, which I didn't take any of this as being deliberately, deflammatory, if that's a real word, inflammatory, whatever, some type of Tory. But yeah, we have these different hardware solutions, and this is what I've asked questions in the past. I've asked questions like, listen, if you're going to make a CoCo SDC, why not stick a sound chip on that and make it a more useful thing? Right now, to me, the CoCo and Nick is in favor of this, and I agree to many extents. The CoCo SDC is that utility cartridge. It's the thing that everybody has. It's the thing that everybody uses, and I'm a big fan of less is more. I don't want to use a multi-pack. I would rather have everything work off of one cartridge, and I don't, it would be nice just to add a sound synthesizer chip and possibly a DAC or digital playback chip to that. Make that a standard. The problem is we don't have a standard. We're proposing new technologies. There is no standard. If you really want to unify, maybe have a standard solution, and then if it's in everybody's hands, and then poof, then we just develop for that.
It would probably be awesome if Ed could come up with some adapter for the SDC that would add sound, but I guess it's not possible.
Yeah. I kind of like the idea of it being a passive thing, like where Steve Bjork is mentioning. If we plug it into the serial port and we can just send data to it that way, that makes sound. That's kind of neat, and that's an unobtrusive thing that doesn't require modifying anything. A sound solution should be affordable and should be hopefully reusable. Although I do understand John Linville's idea was, listen, if you're going to make the cartridge anyways, this doesn't add any cost to the cartridge. So if you were planning on making a ROM cartridge, this is a value-added component to that cartridge, and that makes 100% sense. But if it would also be kind of cool if it could be just a sound chip that could be used more than once, and then we could further develop for that. So there's different schools of thought, and I don't think either one's wrong.
Well, take the combination of the sound card and add it to a flash pack. That way, when you're downloading the software into the flash, you've got your extra hardware.
Right.
And it could be used on a whole bunch of games or products.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Different ways to approach that.
Each product, John's and Ed's, they are really targeted at a slightly different market, really. One is to sell game cartridges with sound, and the other one is a sound card, essentially, to be used universally.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
But to use that, you've got to have a multi-pack interface.
That's right, yeah.
Right.
But it means, yeah, well, that is true, yeah.
Or load off tape.
Load off tape, yeah.
A solution for everything.
Motor on, sound on, audio on, or whatever that command was, right? Just recorded onto a tape.
But all these products, they do have their pluses and minuses. I will admit mine does have a major minus in the sense that the audio that is played, while there's 8 sources for it, they're coming from 8 individual micro SD cards. And you have to put the sounds out on the cards before you can use it. Now, what I'm going to do is set it up so that each game gets their own folder, and there's 250 folders that can be pre-assigned, and that way you put all the sounds in that particular folder on all 8 of them, and then that's available for all 8 sound players. And these files are either MP3s or WAVs, which are beautiful in audio quality, much better than you can get with these chip solutions. And with 8 different sound effects being able to be fired, gives me a luxury I even didn't have back in the days when I was making arcade games and console games. Those guys, you simply told it, hey, play this sound effect, and it would go off and do it. And what you have to do at some point is when the sound effect had decayed enough in volume, you would say, okay, that one doesn't have to be played anymore, and reuse it for the next one. Well, I've gone from 3 to basically 8 sound units, and I'm really not going to have a sound get cut off that much before I would reuse that channel again.
Yeah, and see, the interesting thing is with what you're talking about, this is something you're already making. So you've actually got your own kind of industry with this technology. You've got some experience in this, and so you already know what it's going to do. And so for you, you're proposing something that you've got some experience with. It makes sense, and and again, it wasn't like, hey, I'm looking for your approval. It was more like, hey, here's this thing, right? But somebody else who doesn't have that experience or understanding, they're going to automatically look at this. Well, why? I don't know. I don't get it. Why do we want to do this? And there's just that natural tendency to just want to dismiss something that is out of the ordinary. Or if you don't wrap your brain around it instantly, it's immediately dismissible. And luckily that doesn't dissuade the people who are creating things, because if we all would only create things that we got, popular opinion votes on, a lot of things would never get created. So, it's interesting, and it's and it's really unfortunate that today's streaming is a nightmare, because this is a really cool topic, and I fear that we're going to lose a lot of it on the playback. So, I'm almost wondering if we maybe want to put it to bed just to not lose it. But I want to hear from anybody else who's here in the call right now, and anybody just wanted to chime in on the topic.
Hi, I'm Ciaran, Ancomb, author of XRAW, and your brain is resolving sensory input into CoCoTALK.
What's going on, everybody? Original Gamer Stevie Stroh here, and when you are done with CoCoTALK, why not head on over to my YouTube channel and get your share of gameplay goodness. There you will find everything from the old school to the next gen. There are video game reviews, interviews, how-tos, and replays of CoCoTALK. So for all of your video game needs on YouTube, head on over to youtube.com/OG Stevie Stroh for your share of gameplay goodness today.
Didn't it used to be that Radio Shack was basically the standard for what we were getting, like ROM packs, whatever? And
of course,
we don't have that now.
Well, they're the 800-pound gorilla in the room. You had all these other companies producing products. I worked for a third-party software developer, and Zaxxon sales were okay. But when Tandy decided, hey, we're going to sell them through the store, the cassette version of Zaxxon just went through the roof. And yeah, it is the 800-pound gorilla, but we don't have the 800-pound gorilla. Yeah. So instead, we've got people like Cloud9 and other developers. And while they may not be 800 pounds, but I'd say Cloud9's at least a 100-pound gorilla.
So why wouldn't there be some kind of a board of somebody getting together and making a standard for everything, instead of just whoever is the slickest first?
Money, time, energy.
Yeah, but we get together to have a Tandy assembly. Couldn't we get together to have a Tandy standards?
standards and practices.
The problem when you have standards is when you get two people together, you're going to have three different opinions.
Yeah.
Well, let's have a lot of people.
Well, let's. Okay, all right. You want some sort of standards committee? I'm going to put you in charge. You're going to finance it. You are going to spend your time doing it, and you're the one that's going to take all the gruff from the people that don't like your standards.
And then meanwhile, someone's going to come up with another different standard and just go their own way.
So what's the outcome?
The outcome is right back where we are. Yeah. So
even if it did, you'd end up with something that had so many different options and profiles that everybody could pick their own to develop a board, and none of them would work together.
Right. The only standard is it has to work on the CoCo. But as far as that goes, it's their hobby, it's their project. They're gonna work it in a way that makes sense to them.
And wasn't there already Radio Shack had the sound speech pack, but weren't there like two others out there that were on their complete own ports and stuff as well?
Yeah.
So.
Well, even like speech packs. I mean, there was Tandy speech packs. There was a Super Voice from
Peterware.
There was the Voice from Speech Systems. There was,
that was something I also brought up too when we started talking about this whole fragmented sound thing, because what was mentioned by John Strong and a few other people, they were basically saying, I never developed for the speech sound pack back in the day. It was because, number one, I didn't have it. They didn't give me one. I would have needed a multi-pack. So as a software developer, you would have had to, out of your own pocket, spend several $100s just to have access to that thing to possibly develop for it. So that was an obstacle to the developer. And I actually had suggested back then it would be neat if these guys could create a developer's kit at low cost to give to the developers. And it sounds like that's now starting to happen. And I think that offer is a generous offer, and it's an offer that it will hopefully help spark some development for these technologies. The PC had the same problem with sound too. Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Just real fast on what you're talking about there. Barry Thompson, I had a lot of conversations with him, and he would be shaking his head because the color computer was one of the cheapest systems to get in for developing software for, Tandy quality that they're going to sell in their store. And things like, well, I have to go out and buy a multi-pack and a sound card to develop for it. It's like, dude, if you're going to develop for some of these other systems, you're going to have to spend $5,000-$10,000 for a development system. You could just put together a cheap CoCo and more or less have a development system. So, the entry into the market was really cheap. So these little conversations I hear like, well, I have to buy a multi-pack and a sound cartridge. That's why I don't develop for it. No, it's just a simple fact that the person's a little lazy. Look how many games I came out with that at least use the sound portion of the speech sound pack.
Yeah. It was a couple of them that I can remember right now. It was
Pitfall 2 and
Gana Buana.
Mm-hmm.
I think the problem is that anyone who's developing software is going to develop software for the widest market, the largest market, and the sound and speech pack just wasn't really widespread enough.
Right. It's kind of the chicken and egg thing too, right? And I think that's what they're trying to address now with sound hardware, is address the chicken and egg thing.
Well, the other thing about software development and hardware is, at least the hardware also has to be kind of an open architecture, because you remember when IBM came out with their microchannel standard, and it was proprietary, and it fell flat because nobody developed it because it wasn't an open standard compared to other standards like VESA. And,
back then when IBM came up with microchannel, Compaq and a bunch of others got together and came up with the enhanced EISA, and that took the market over. So,
yeah, and the thing is, if you make it open, a lot of the software developers will look at it and say, and of course they're going to look at who's buying this stuff, and then they're going to, of course, adapt that way. Right. And that's probably one of the reasons why the speech sound cartridge didn't take off, is because it was expensive as a consumer item, and it wasn't quite as open to developers as it should have been.
And then the final killing of the speech sound pack was the fact that you couldn't use it with the double speed poke of the CoCo 3.
Yeah.
Right.
And just to get onto the whole bit about standards again briefly here, I mean, this will be relevant to a lot of people in the chat right now in the call. Tandy tried to make OS 9 the standard. And a lot of game developers, because it doesn't work well for that kind of situation, kind of went, well, no.
Well, the other thing, too, is all my games had an OS in them already. Why did I need another one?
And Karen says that the speech sound pack was made out of glued together hen's teeth.
The stupid reason why the speech sound pack would not work on a CoCo 3 with the double speed poke is the fact that they were using the clock frequency coming off that cartridge thing to run a DC to DC converter so they could get higher voltage. And it just couldn't operate at that new frequency.
Right, you have to modify the speech sound cartridge in order to make it work.
But if you put a divide by 2, it works both in standard speed and high speed.
Interesting stuff. Yeah, I mean, it is
really.
it's such a shame we're having such a crappy streaming day today. Is that Barry that just chimed in?
Yeah, really. So there's a patch you can do that actually causes it to work in both speed modes.
I have 2 packs somewhere in my collection that have a flip-flop in there that divides the frequency by 2, and it automatically makes the thing work. The other way to work it is to put a second power supply in to supply power for it.
I'll have to look at mine again, because I actually have mine modified for the CoCo 3, but a flip-flop, that would be very interesting to do. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was a lot back in the days when I worked for Tandy in developing hardware. The original high-resolution device that I was creating for Tandy, not the high-res joystick interface, was basically a digital version of an interface for a serial mouse, kind of like. And it was going to run about $100 retail for the parts that had to go in there. And they said, go back and redesign it. And so I said, okay, I'll use the joystick. And I created my voltage pump converter. And they were able to manufacture that thing in Asia for about, $2.50, and brought over to U.S. So there was a lot of design decisions to how to make the stuff cheap, and I'm sure that's one of the things that happened in the speech sound pack was they knew they weren't going to have 12 volts anymore. It was a -5. There was some voltage in there. They needed the DC to DC converter, and the way to do it was just to take it off the clock rather than having their own oscillator.
Another nickel squeezer.
Oh, now you got me interested in pulling out my speech sound cartridge again.
Yeah.
Please don't. It's horrible.
The Logic could handle the extra high frequency that you get from doubling the clock speed, but it was that oscillator that was having the problem.
Right. Yeah. I normally play it for the interbank incident, so kind of a cool game.
And actually, if you patch the driver, which is what I've done, so that it slows down the clock speed when it accesses the speech sound cartridge, it'll work fine on the CoCo 3, even on level 2. As long as you slow down the clock speed whenever you access the speech sound pack, and we wait for it to operate, and then you can kick the clock speed back up to normal again when that process is completed, which is what my driver does.
It's pretty pointless though. You can't buy sound and speech packs now anyway, so it's not as if CoCo users you can write software that will make CoCo users rush out and buy a sound and speech pack to run it. And secondly, the sound and speech cartridge isn't that good, really.
But it's fun.
Well, it's not as good as the offers that both John and Ed have got.
Oh, I agree.
Right.
But it's for nostalgia purposes. I mean, that's the whole thing.
Yeah, but you're not going to find anyone who's going to spend time to write a game that's going to specifically support the sound and speech pack. So,
all right.
So here's what I'm going to do. For those of you who are watching this live, I'm not going to stop this conversation, but I'm going to stop the live streaming because the live streaming is just broken right now, and it's just really frustrating and distracting me. So I have been also recording this. Once it broke earlier, I started recording, and I'm going to keep recording. So if you guys want to hear the rest of the conversation, I will release this in audio format as soon as I can this weekend so everybody else can hear this. But I'm just really getting tired of watching the stream start and stop and buffer. It's just driving my OCD crazy. So thank you all for watching this live, and I'm going to stop the stream and just go to, what the hell's my website called? CoCoTalk.live. Go to CoCoTalk.live or subscribe to the podcast, and you'll hear the download of this later. So goodbye out there in YouTube land. Bye-bye.
Hello, I am David Ladd, and you are watching CoCoTalk, the nation's leading live CoCo podcast.
Radio Shack TRS-80 put the world of color computing into your home. Instant loading program packs turn any color TV into an exciting game arcade. And there's more. The color computer is an educational aid, a home management tool, and up-to-the-minute electronic information service. The programmable, expandable TRS-80 color computer from $399 only at Radio Shack, the biggest name in little computers.
Yeah, that was
while we've
driving me insane.
While I've been talking, I've been trying to figure out what's been going on, doing research on the internet. But I'll tell you, I can't even bring up web pages right now. The West Coast is having some real problems with the internet.
North Korea.
I thought we weren't going political here.
That might be Steve's issues. It's just maybe there's
the internet,
DDoS attack going on right now.
Yeah. What have you done again, David?
It's an MP. It's a big fat.
I stuck something in the wrong hole.
Oh,
it's the
David.
Commodore people.
Why would the Commodore people be worried?
So I think the moral
where
of the
does
story,
David Ladd live?
Why?
In the Twilight Zone. I think the moral of the story here is I don't think anybody has really ever gotten to the point where they don't think we're not a community in a general sense, and I don't think anybody's trying to screw anybody over here. But it happens. Your feathers will get ruffled from time to time. It's part of being a human being. But it seems like John had a peaceful thing to say in what I read from him to a degree, and I think Ed Snyder too also said, "Listen, I was defending." It's kind of like he said. So. If you're going to talk about me, I have to defend myself, but I don't think anybody was trying to go for the jugular. And at the end of the day, I hope there's cool new products that we can benefit from.
Well, that's the thing is, I was reading through those posts and I'm kind of going, why are people getting so upset? It's not that bad. Of course, I'm also remembering the days of CompuServe and other places where, let's put it this way, the feathers really did fly.
Yep. They did.
I used to be on FidoNet. We used to call it Fight-O-Net because there was a lot of fights.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah, I really don't see the issue myself. It's like, if I was going to make a game, probably right off the get-go, I would think, am I going to make this on a cartridge? And if I was, then I'd probably use John's solution. No?
Well, from the standpoint that, because I've been looking at Ed's design, at least as far as how to interface it, I've been looking at John's, at least from what little information I can find on it myself. They still use the SCS line for decoding for the FF4/5X ranges. So basically, if you use an MPI, you're still going to have to tell it what slot it's in. So the software will have to have some way of asking the user what slot is the cartridge in. So technically, you could use John's in an MPI and not even have to worry about the ROM cartridge part. The only drawback I'd see is that if you wanted external audio, like where pretty much all of Ed's cartridges and Jim's have the audio line outlines, John's doesn't have that. But of course, John's is designed to be a game cart. So, but both can be used in an MPI by disc basic games. It's just the thing is that the game would have to ask what slot it's in.
Why do you have to ask what slot? You just select different slots and see if the chip responds.
Is there actually any feedback?
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think about that.
Jim Brain has joined us.
If the pack you're looking for has any sort of a ROM in it at all that is known, then you can select the slots and look for the ROM. If it doesn't have a ROM that you can look for, then you can. Usually, most most devices have some sort of a unique behavior that you can detect. And you can select the slot, and hopefully maybe you have something built in there to specifically to exhibit unique behavior. And you select the slot and you look for that particular behavior, some sort of an ID byte or particular response, and then automatically determine which slot your device is in.
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
In developing these products that I develop for the haunters, they actually build them. And what I have to put in there is software that analyzes every single component to make sure that it is working correctly and responding correctly and everything else, because these guys may not solder points on a soldering board. They may not put the parts in right. I even have it going through and analyzing the audio spectrum analyzer system to make sure that's working. I have to do so much diagnostic, and going out there to look for a particular little chip sitting out on a bus is real easy to do via the, this type of diagnostics.
And there's Steve eating his cucumber.
I was on mute during the crunching.
That's not an ice cream sandwich.
Oh, what a good time. What a good time. Yeah. It's almost anticlimactic, though, that we came from like 2 weeks of pure euphoria and, just riding that warm, fuzzy cloud of, Tandy Assembly was awesome. Tandy Assembly wrap-up was awesome. And then we get into a little bit of a pissing contest. But I didn't take this as being any type of deal breaker or relationship breaker or community breaker. I really saw this one as being a, we're going to agree to disagree, and hopefully we'll get back to, where we were and where we need to be. So,
Hello, my name is Grant Leedy, and thank you for watching the CoCo Talk with your host, Stevie Stroh. You got your CoCo 3 yet?
Yeah. Well, as I posted on the forum, all these sound cards, each one has their own merits. I have to admit,
sure.
I prefer a sound chip that's, does FM to create the sound, opposed to doing something that's a simple square wave like the TI chip is. But of course, that's also coming from the fact that my board uses MP3 or waves, where you can have beautifully created sounds.
Sure.
You can have somebody talking. You can do whatever the heck you want. But there's also downsides to that too. That you've got to have those sounds in a particular track or folder and put it on 8 different micro SD cards.
Right. That's far from a simple, elegant solution, but it is a solution. And then it could be argued. You could be argued. Well, that's not period correct, and we didn't have that back in the day. So
yeah.
we can find something to argue about.
I was being very careful not to try and look like I was getting into some sort of mine is better than yours. I was set up right off the bat. Each one has their own merits.
Yeah.
And I stated the problems with mine, in addition to what I thought was the advantage of mine. But the real advantage of mine is, as you pointed out, I'm going to be building this for the haunt community. That's where I'm making most of my money. Adding in the ability to look at the RS-232 lines isn't that hard. I throw that on there. That's good for the CoCo or any other community that wants to use it. And then he just cracked his neck.
Right.
And Jim had joined and left because so Jim's working on a memory upgrade, right? And right now the kind of market has been cornered by Mark Marlette on memory, and Jim Brain's working on a memory unit. There's one out there on the Dragon that's adding memory as well. Although I don't think anybody would consider nothing against the Dragon, but there's not a lot of us developing new Dragon hardware, so I don't think anybody's going to view that as a threat. But and here's Jim. Hey, Jim.
Hey,
Jim. Hey. So yeah, we were just kind of talking about the the hardware competition in a sense, and and you're now working on a memory upgrade, which technically is competition with Cloud9, but I think Boisey's mentioned, and I'm sure you and Mark Marlette have had some discussions, and right now these paths you guys are going are peaceful paths that you're running parallel, correct?
I think so. I mean, I haven't had a lot of opportunity to talk to Mark. I did reach out to him and say, hey, I was thinking about, I can't remember exactly what I was talking about, but I think I'd reached out to him around either memory expansion or the flash cartridge or whatever. And I mean, he has his own path he wants to take with some of the work that he's doing, and so there wasn't a lot of interest in collaboration, I think, at the time. So I launched out on my own to do what I wanted to do.
And we just lost Jim.
Bad internet everywhere.
Yeah, so and here's another. It's another kind of parallel. Now he's calling back in. Why? Now it says, okay.
Well, the real question is, what's going to be different between them?
Well, I think the Cloud9 is a strictly 512K upgrade, which is just a modern replacement to the Tandy product. It plugs into the same slots, so
Well, I was going to ask that. Are we referring to his 512K Triad board, or are we referring to his upcoming Super board?
Well, that's I don't have any details on that, so because it's not a product yet. But yeah, so is Jim's product competing with a? Could we call it a future product when it's been a project, a product that's been a work in progress forever? Now, a similar thing that has kind of, when we talk about competition, when we talked about making this show a podcast, and again, getting back to like our own inner circle, can we all agree to agree? There are many people in this group that says, well, I don't understand why you would want to make this a podcast, and are we competing with ourselves, which is almost such an odd thing to think about. Are we competing with ourselves? But not everybody understood it. Curtis and I were talking about it, and then the light bulb went on in my head, and then I said, okay, well, this kind of makes sense. And it made sense to me. And the minute it made sense to me, the fact if anybody else liked it or didn't like it or saw the value in it or whatever, it didn't matter. It just, to me, it made perfect sense that this is an extension of the show. And honestly, to be completely honest, and it was completely selfish reasons, I just figured if I threw it out there in the podcast sphere, I would hope that through osmosis we might get new viewers. I really wanted to use this as a kind of a tool to get more people to watch the show, because in my mind this is a video show, and so I figured some people might find it and they might say, hey, I can't see what these guys are talking about, let me watch the show. That was my original intention, was just a way to increase viewership. Before I did it though, and this is just people's different character, I actually reached out to John Linville and I said, listen, here's what I'm thinking about doing. For lack of a better term, do you have a problem with this? Would you view this as competition or anything else? And he was very graceful and he was very gracious, and he said, not at all. And again, I wouldn't necessarily have needed his blessing, but I chose to ask for it. Just the kind of person that I am, and we've seen now that I never thought we would be a threat. I never tried to be a threat. I'm not trying to take them down or anything like that. We're creating a product just like Ed Snyder's creating a product. There are different products out there, and there's different, and there's a room for all these products to exist at the same time. And luckily for us, the CoCo crew has been very positive in mentioning our show, and I think we try to bring their show into ours, and now they can bring some stuff. They've already stolen David Ladd, so
better in the first place.
So I think there is a way to have that kind of professional courtesy, and we can always agree to disagree, but I think if you treat everybody with you try to respect everybody, I think that works well in the long run.
Yeah, one thing I want to add too is, a lot of times it's people with fairly, forceful personalities that tend to get involved in some of these scraps on occasion, which some people view as a negative. That they're very opinionated on things. But on the other hand, it's these same people that usually are the drivers to actually get something done. So you kind of got that.
Say that again. I didn't quite follow you.
Well, basically, we have some people that with some forceful personalities that have very opinionated views on things, and they will express them as much as they can. But these are the same people that actually have, because of their forceful personality, have the drive to actually get these products out and get them done, as opposed to just talking about them ad infinitum.
Sure.
So I think that's the same in any part of the tech world. I mean, the Bill Gates and the Steve Jobs. I mean, a lot of people really didn't like a lot of their opinions back in the days. But they were the ones who got the market going forward and
sure
did all kinds of things that a lot of people didn't agree with at the time.
Yeah,
and I think we're hitting some of that on a smaller scale, but I think we're hitting some of that here. But it's both positive and negative, just like the products themselves.
Right.
Where would we be today if IBM had been driving the market? Amazing.
Actually, it'd probably be like Apple.
Yeah, and Apple, to be honest, I mean, IBM didn't drive the market that long. Once the ISA and the consortium between Compaq and everybody, Dell and everybody else came together, they kind of lost control of it. So that wasn't a very long thing.
Irony. Yeah, Microsoft won that.
Yeah, Wintel won it, not IBM.
Yeah. Very cool stuff. All right, well, have we beat this one to death?
Never.
Yes.
Never.
Until somebody disagrees with it, then it starts all over again.
Right.
Yeah, we haven't hit the 5-hour mark, so we still got a while to go.
No, I mean, I think the fact that we have a show like the CoCo Crew podcast that gives us this content and puts this community spotlight, it's a great resource. They have all these things that are positive things, and I would say that if you had to take the good with the bad, the percentage is much higher on the good end of the spectrum than it is on the bad end, and that's just part of life. Sometimes you're gonna happens in your own families. Yeah, and the fact that we have enough
interest in the community, a community this small, of getting this many competing products out, I think that's a positive.
Right. In fact, like
I would much rather have this problem than have nothing getting developed.
Yeah. Complaining about too many choices, right? It's a terrible problem to have. It's a first world problem.
I wonder what kind of trouble I'd get in if I mentioned another comment.
Well, let's go ahead and mention it and let's find out. We're off the air. I can always edit it out.
Okay.
Or not. Or will I?
Well, one of the things that people talk about, like the CoCo SDC, that they wish they had the sound in there. Technically, if someone really wanted to get advantageous enough to make a pass-through card, they could put a card that has a cartridge slot on the end of it, and just build the audio hardware in it, and then basically that plugs into the CoCo, and the CoCo SDC plugs into that, and there you go.
Yep.
Right.
I think it has been mentioned before, actually.
Right.
Yeah,
pass-through card.
Right. I had something for me Dragon that would it would act as a cartridge port pass through, but it would redirect the sort of other slot inside the case. Of course, the Dragon was large enough it could do that. It meant I could have a DOS cartridge set inside the Dragon, and you'd then plug other things in too. That was kind of cool.
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah, because technically, a lot of people that did what they call repacks, the CoCo, a lot of people did things like used a Y cable, used the gold-plated connectors, and then would the most that you could safely do was 3 cartridges. So they usually have the floppy controller, like the Kenton controller, and the Deluxe RS-232 pack. They'd remove all the ROMs except for one from one of the 3 devices. And then they'd plug them all together in on that ribbon cable inside the repack. So therefore, you'd have all 3 cartridges working together.
TC9 used that.
So, there's different techniques that's been used, for hooking multiple cartridges together, either passively, like with the ribbon cable, or actively with like an MPI design. So
the disadvantage of the ribbon cable one is that a lot of people didn't fully decode the addresses, so they'd start ghosting all over the place and overwriting each other. Like on the T9, there were certain hard drive controllers and certain floppy controllers you could use together, but not all of them.
Right. Like with the floppy controllers, I had my FD502, and then my another one that I had actually put in, I think, a 74 LS00, and then I managed to set it up so that it would only respond to the FF4X range. So then I could actually have like another controller on it, like the Super IDE or the Glen side IDE on the FF5X range without that ghosting issue. So.
You can actually do that without using a chip. I did it on mine by using a couple diodes and a resistor.
We've officially become Tech Talk. What an it's God, it was such a weird way to have our show today, and it's even weirder fact that the internet gods were frowning upon us that this could not stream. But yeah, I don't know. We talked about it. I don't know what good it did, but maybe we feel better.
I was looking at the traffic, internet traffic report on level 3, which is one of the main backbone providers of services worldwide, and they were reporting a ton of outages in the States an hour ago. I don't know if it's still.
Yeah, and the weird thing is like my Skype call here with you guys, I've never lost my call to you guys, so my input and output is not necessarily an issue, but somehow reaching YouTube was the issue. So it's somewhere downstream that we're having that issue. Yep. We're recording the show, so we'll still be able to replay this. One of the things I wanted to play today too, which I can't do now, but I'll edit this in. But I have a new video trailer for Forest of Doom. It's now trailer number 3 that I was going to show. You guys want to see it? I can do a screen share.
Sure. Yeah,
right.
Certainly.
No way you guys can see it. So hold on one second.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Hey, this is Bruce Moore, author of Force of Doom, and you're watching the Original Gamer Stevie Stroh.
So I says, if you think he's so grand, why don't you have him over for dinner?
The wizard for dinner! That's so funny!
Did you fellas see that lad who came in about 1:15?
Yeah, I seen him. Kid was all fired up saying someone lifted his money and wanted to know who it was.
Looking for the bandits! That's so funny!
Liable to get his throats cut, he keeps talking like that.
Yeah, get his throat cut!
I think that lad is going to try to recover the King's Scepter.
The King's Scepter? From the wizard? In the middle of the Forest of Doom? That poor bug'll be lucky if being robbed is all that happens to him.
Yeah, lucky!
There's something different about this one, though.
Different? Bah, I should rob him again myself. Get a few lads and follow him in a ways.
Yeah, follow him in and rob him!
I'm not so sure you want to be doing that now, Bill. Did you see that tome he was carrying?
That dusty old book? What of it?
Yeah, what of it?
I heard him say it contained the secrets of the Forest of Doom. I think this lad means business.
Well, that may be, but book or no book, I've never seen someone come back from that quest.
Yeah, never come back.
Well, I'll be wishing him luck. And while I'm at it, warn him about the shadows.
Are you ready? For the Forest of Doom. For the tiny color computer 1, 2, and 3.
November 2017, if you dare.
Yeah, if you dare.
Hi, this is Mark Overholser, and you're listening to CoCoTALK, the nation's leading weekly live talk show about the Tandy color computer.
And there you have it. Forest of Doom, Trailer 3. What do you guys think about that? Pretty clever, huh?
Pretty clever, huh?
I don't know if you guys caught it, but I don't think on my recording I caught it. But at the very beginning, it said, "Meanwhile at the Heron Point Inn." So I thought that was kind of funny, tying it into CoCo Fest. Yeah, good stuff. So yeah, I'll make sure that makes it into the final edit of this. So I also squeezed that into the last 2 audio podcasts I uploaded too. So the Roundtable and the Tandy Assembly wrap-up show, it made it in both of those. Good stuff, good stuff. All right, so have we beat this conversation to death?
Never.
Yep, we solved it all. So it's
we solved it. We've solved it. If there's a problem, I'll solve it.
You can't get enough beating in there.
No. All right, well, let's wrap up CoCoTALK episode 30, which means we actually got in. We're right around a 2-hour show, which is it's a short episode.
Really? I mean, inconceivable.
Inconceivable, yes. Very cool.
Crazy.
Why don't we think, because we didn't have an actual show today, why don't we think of something else to talk about that's not dramatic, and maybe we can do a Discord session later where we'll just record or whatever. If we just record it and bandwidth isn't the issue, we could still do Skype. But maybe we'll do another offline CoCoTALK that we can just record and release to have a normal show if anybody's interested in doing that later this evening. A bonus episode.
Okay. Just time.
Yeah,
Hey,
we'll throw it out there in the Skype and we'll figure it out. Yeah, go ahead, David.
Oh, I was going to say, Richard.
Yes.
Have you gotten on Discord yet?
No, not yet. But if you're on it, I definitely am not going to get on it.
Oh,
so.
Come on. Let the record show I was not the one throwing poo at David Ladd.
Come on, why? Why do I deserve such criticism?
You know what they say, David?
Fun.
You only hurt the ones you love, so you must be loved a lot, David.
Yeah, depending on what time it is tonight too. I don't know if I'll be able to join in. I'm still trying to catch up stuff I haven't done because of work for the last 3 months. So I've actually got some iPad replacement for my mom to do, and I've got a friend's 50th birthday this afternoon, and so I don't know if I'll be available or not, but we'll see, depending on the time.
All right. Well, we are going to call this one Time of Death at 4:10 p.m. We are now going to conclude episode 30 of CoCoTALK, the Community Drama Edition. And for those who are still left in the call, I am left with Nick Marentes, Grant Leight, Glen, Hewlett, and who's got the flower on their screen right here right now? Eddy, Szczerbinski, John T. Robbs, who's been pretty silent the whole time. Hey, John. Richard Lorbieski, Barry Nelson, David Ladd, L. Curtis Boyle, Mark Overholser, Ciaran Ancomb, Brendan Donahe, Ron Delvaux and his bouncing ball, and Retro Innovations Jim Brain. Thank you guys for being here. Thanks for being part of the discussion. And thanks for keeping things dramatic for us. We always appreciate that.
Anytime.
We should have done it in Shakespearean voices.
Yes.
LLAPP.
Thou dost.
To sound or not to sound? That is his question.
Yes. All right. Well, here's to internet drama, too, since we had our share of internet drama today, too.
Yeah, with the level 3 backbone there, that if you look at that usage map, I posted the link in the chat there, in Skype chat, it's pretty bad.
Oh, wow.
It's hitting the States hard.
Good times. Good times.
And England, that seems to be the two.
Oh, wow.
Maybe we should do this at 4 a.m. for our Australian friend.
4 a.m. our time would be what? 8 p.m. his time or something?
Yeah.
We gotta flip the tables one time. Yeah, we'll all get together at 4 a.m. CoCoTALK at some point in time.
It's only 1 a.m. time, so that's okay.
Ah.
Just stay up extra late.
All right, guys.
Here, so now I'm pretty well up then anyway most times.
Oh, I got my CM8 monitor hooked up today. I finally got my. That's why I have my camera kind of zoomed back so you can see. There's no more boxes all over my floor here left over from Tandy Assembly. So I got the CM8 hooked up. I took a couple of phone videos on it, posted those to Facebook. I like it. Looks nice. Popstar Pilot looks really good on a CM8. So does Pac-Man Transcode 1.12. I've tried both of those. They both look really good.
Cool.
Those are like my go-to testing apps now.
Yeah, I'm going to have to see what Popstar Pilot looks like on my HDMI input now.
Ooh, fancy schmancy.
You have to try Sockmaster's High Color with a BMP file or something.
Yeah, that might be interesting.
Just send me a disk image.
Right. All right, guys. I'm going to sign off for now. Hopefully, I'll run into you all later this afternoon or evening. Until then, CoCoTALK out.
Later, Steve.
Okay, so what time are we getting together tonight?
I don't know, a couple hours. I'll throw out some feelers in the normal Facebook chat, and we'll play it by ear.
Okay.
Yeah, if it's a couple hours, I probably won't be able to make it, unfortunately. But unless you have a 6-hour long episode, then I can join in the end.
You never know.
So, later, Steve. So, who else is staying around?
Hi, I'm Mike Rowan, and you're watching the original gamer, Stevie Stroh. And when you're done watching, come over and listen to the CoCo Crew podcast.
Hi, this is John Linville.
And Neil Blanchard.
We are the CoCo Crew. I hope you're enjoying watching Stevie Stroh play video games, especially the CoCo games. And when you're done with that, check out our podcast at CoCoCrew.org.
Where can you catch all the latest news and information about the Tandy Color computer and compatibles? Oh yeah, I'm talking about the CoCo Crew podcast. Dig it each month. Join John, Neil, and Mike as they lay down the latest news and information about the Radio Shack Tandy Color computer and compatibles. Groove to interviews, tech segments, and discussions all about the Radio Shack Tandy Color computer. Strut your fine self over to www.cococrew.org and start listening today. The CoCo Crew Podcast. Keeping it CoCo, dig?
Thanks for listening to another episode of CoCoTALK. We certainly hope you enjoyed the show. And if you did, why not check us out on the web at cocotalk.live, where you can watch video replays of all of our live episodes, as well as send us feedback and suggestions for the show. We'd certainly love to hear from you. Until next week, I'm the original gamer, Stevie Stroh. Keep on CoCoing, CoCo forever. Have a CoCo day, and bye-bye, everybody.